So pretty good, not bad at all. So I think that there's a lot of good things happening, but I definitely think that there's some stuff that we could just polish. That way, the bassoon playing gets better. And playing bassoon early on is really difficult. So the first thing I wanted to touch on is your posture. Um, just off the bat, posture is gonna set you up for great playing. It's gonna set you up for relaxation. It's gonna set you up for a lot of really good things that you want to happen on the bassoon. And so when you're playing the bassoon, you don't want any extra kind of like hands hurting or like back things, or like maybe your like right leg is in pain because you have like weight, you have it at an angle and it's like digging into your leg. So when you're playing the bassoon, make sure you sit at the edge of your chair. Make sure that your back is straight. Make sure that your feet are flat on the floor. And so when you're holding the bassoon, make sure that the strap is as furthest to the chair as possible. And then make sure that you're putting most of the weight on your right leg and you're angling it. That way you don't have to worry about, digging into your leg or like kind of getting so much pressure on your left hand that you can't possibly like finger some of those notes, especially because there's a lot of like really unique fingerings. And so make sure that when the bassoon is facing the into your mouth, make sure that it's also at an angle. That way you don't, you keep your chin up and level. That way you don't like kind of like squeeze your chin down and squeeze your throat, or like you have your chin like way up here or anything like that, like you're reaching. So make sure that it's always like at a good angle and stuff like that. That way you get the right breathing, you get your oral cavity nice and straight, and you get everything aligned, and you aim for relaxation because that's really the main thing. So can I just have you play the first four measures just with some new posture and see how that works? Yeah. So already your breath support was already so much better, and you had a lot of better of a line. You had a better phrasing, so that was a really good thing. But now I want to focus on the next thing, which seems to be affecting us, which is these half whole notes, like the G and the other G that pops up in measure three. So I can tell you're blowing the air that you need for it, and I understand it's already like an awkward fingering as it is, so you have to go from like two fingers to like kind of having all your fingers pushed down, and so I think that you're doing a really good job of making sure that the note comes out, and staying consistent to it. But when you're doing these half hold techniques, they're very particular, so like make sure that you're doing kind of like a crab kind of like adjustment to that first finger. And some bassoons have like keys and stuff like that that'll kind of like go over the bassoon to make it easier for you. But in our case, we don't have anything like that. So yeah, make sure that when you're going through it, that your finger is sliding down and that you're properly doing a half hold technique. My finger usually when I'll do it, like my finger gets like wrinkly and stuff like that, and like smudgy, like kind of like from water because of the spit that's like coming out. So that's how you know like you're covering the entire hole effectively. But like that way you have a good gauge of whether or not, oh, like my finger feels really wet, or I can feel like a lot of air coming out of that one hole and I'm not getting a note out. So a half hole technique is very particular on the bassoon. So be very diligent to that, so that way you get the notes out and they fully speak. Can we try the same four measures again with thinking about these things? Yeah. So this was a hell of a lot better. I think that definitely like those half hold techniques, like they're pretty awkward. So I totally don't blame you for having a little bit of issues with it, because I definitely have issues with those things as well. So yeah, thinking about those half hold techniques, especially on the F sharp later on too. Is there any way that I could have you play the pickups in the piano? So I can have you play the F sharp as well. Yeah. So you notice how that first time you got kind of like the low octave down, which is totally okay. But that's what I mean when I say that it's like very tricky. So that way, like you keep those like half hole, techniques, so that way the air passes through correctly. Because if not, then you're gonna get like kind of like what happened right there with the small like fidgety things. But anyways, I'm going to go on to the next thing, which I think is affecting us too, which is the venting notes, like the A natural, the B, and the C. So the tone quality in those notes they're always kind of a struggle to kind of like make sure that you're playing correctly and stuff like that too, because the nature of the instrument requires you to overblow on these notes. That way you can kind of get the right speaking tone quality, and instead of getting like kind of like a like mumbled sound like this. So I think that's like really important. So when you're pressing when you're going from the whisper key to that first venting key, um, um, try to make sure that you're like properly like going over it, and that you're like putting all these fingers down at the same time too, and that you're overblowing, because some fingerings will kind of like I said, it will dampen your sound. So make sure that you're using the correct fingerings for the A, which should just be your regular fingerings, and then with that what's it called, that venting key, that way you kind of like overblow into it. So
Yeah, and which one is it here? Is it?
yeah, so it's gonna be right above your whisper key.
Okay.
It's gonna be that first one right above your whisper key.
Okay.
So that way you don't have to travel like very far or anything like that. But it could definitely like be some trouble to kind of like go from the whisper key to like kind of like pressing like all these three like thumb keys. Um, so always make sure that you kind of do like I said, pivot and smudge. That way you can like make sure that you get the thumb like working in the right way that you want it to. Um, so yeah, when you're doing these venting things, make sure that you're really going out of your way to overblow too. That way you don't have any struggles. Can we try this again? The first four measures. Yeah, so already a whole of a lot better. I think that you're doing a great job of like really overblowing and stuff like that. And like I said, those notes, because of the nature of the instrument, are gonna naturally have a kind of dampened timbre to it. But you're playing the right fingerings, so maybe the next thing that I want to tackle is something that can help with playing these notes a little bit easier is your embouchure. So make sure that your embouchure is using a correct cue. Make sure that you're thinking Q, and that your corners aren't necessarily firm, but they're engaged. So that way, whenever you play any higher notes, the reed has enough cushion to be able to kind of amplify and be able to support that. So that way, not only do you have your air to really support it, but you also have your embouchure as well. So I think that this is something that can help you further along it too. And that way, anything that you play in this tessitura or even higher, for example, high natural, high flat, all of those notes are going to require you to really, really kind of support here. And so, like, if your corners aren't set and there's not enough kind of like the fat part of your lip on the reed, there's going to be no amplification. Like kind of like how brass players, when they smile on like trumpet or something like that, and they're trying to get a high note out, it doesn't really come out because it's just too thin. So the same concept applies here. But yeah, you're doing a really great job, and I think that there's still a lot of work to do, but you're on the right track.